fellow riders. Warm welcome to Horse Talk. And tonight, let's talk about stuff that affects horse behavior that we can't control, that we can't solve by controlling them. Because this is something I wished I learned like from the start. But as a human and a tactile being, and also by being influenced by going to riding schools and learning from other human tactile beings how to ride, it is so easy to start with controlling a horse and using control as a solution to solve stuff. And I just realized that the thing that has made it easy for me to retrain horses others have given up on, and also to ride at liberty without doing lots of obedience training, is that I have learned how to make my ID the horse's ID and use other means than our natural instinct, which is to control the horse, to solve problems. So I thought I'd share with you some examples of this. And if you are here, let me know in the comments below where you are tuning in from. And if there are any particular problems you might be experiencing with your horse right now, and you want to know a possible way to solve it without controlling the horse, but by making your ID the horse's ID. Okay, let's talk about the first thing, which is a huge one, and that is actually straightness. And you have probably been doing quite a bit of straightness training with your horse. And what I discovered is that the main thing that actually influences a horse's straightness are what I call magnets and anti-magnets. And this might sound very spacey and fluffy, but let me explain. So, magnets are stuff the horse is attracted to, like the gate or other horses. And anti-magnets are stuff the horse is kind of repelled by and maybe a little bit scared of, like corners. So I think we've all been there. We are kind of trying to ride this circle, and we want to make the horse straight on the circle, which means that the horse is bent in the same way as the circle. But if we haven't gotten rid of the gate magnet, which attracts the horse, or the scary corner, which repels the horse, our circle tends to become a little bit like the horse is kind of pushing the shoulder a bit out towards where they want to go. And they tend to kind of shy a little bit away from the scary corner where they don't want to go. And sometimes these horses can also start like rushing a bit towards the gate where they want to go. And they might be a little bit slower away from the gate where they don't want to go. But if we don't kind of notice these magnets and anti-magnets, we often end up riding and trying to, override the horse's idea of going to the gate or the horse's idea of not going to the scary corner. So we, as riders, become the ones trying to make the circle straight, with our inside leg aid and our outside supportive hand. And it's quite a bit of job to, get the horse straight. We might have to hold the horse a little bit back when, riding towards the gate. We might try to push the shoulder a bit away from the magnetic gate. And then we have to ride the horse outwards towards the scary part of the arena. And this can go on like for round after round after round after round. And it becomes a lot of work for us as riders. And we also need to be very technically skilled to be able to, get a horse straight who, has the mind somewhere else. But if we start the session by, mounting the horse and dropping the reins and just riding forwards and see where we end up and start doing our work there, then we have a possibility to actually solve this magnet affecting the horse's straightness. We don't solve it by trying to prevent the horse from going to the gate, but we solve it by working by the gate and making the gate less attractive, right? And it's the same with the scary corner. We don't solve the scary corner by trying to pressure the horse into the scary corner, because that makes the corner even more scary, and the horse will start associating the corner with pressure. So instead, we can then release the horse into the corner and make the corner a favorable place. So I don't want to ride any circles with any horse before the horse is, able to cruise around the arena without being attracted by the gate and without being, repelled by the corner. Because once I've done that, the horse wants to be where he or she wants to be and not everywhere else. And it's so much easier to then ride a straight circle or a straight line for that matter. Because you might have experienced riding on a trail ride with a horse who is a bit reluctant to leave the stable. You need to give a little bit of leg aid, and the horse is, a little bit kind of ziggy-zaggy. But we can, straighten them up and make them straight. But once we turn around with a horse like this and head homewards, that horse is, straight from self, like an arrow. So with those horses, I want to make leaving the stable a favorable thing, and returning home maybe not so favorable, so that the horse is, straight in both directions, not only when returning home. Okay, I hope this makes sense. And we don't solve this straightness issue by controlling the horse. We solve it actually by allowing the mistake to happen and make our ID the horse's ID. But to be able to do that, we first need to know what's the horse's ID. Yes. So let me know in the comments below if this makes sense, because this has made riding so much easier for me. And of course, there might be some unevenness in horses, like they are left-footed or right-footed, if you know what I mean. They have a strong side and a weak side. But those things can easily be solved by, choosing what trot to post, what diagonal to post, post the weak diagonal, or what canter, like ride the weak canter until it's as strong as the strong canter. And in this way, make the horse like physically straight. But the mental kind of magnets drawing the horse or repelling the horse affects very much how straight they are. Okay, I hope this helps. And there's another thing we obviously can't solve by controlling a horse, and that is teaching horses self-control. And a lesson I definitely learned from my spooking and bucking mare. Because the more she spooked and the more she bucked, the more I tried to control her and make her responsive to signals. But the more I controlled her, the more like trapped she felt and the more anxiety was building up in her. So by basically, training her in a completely different way, by also figuring out that me pressuring her to scary objects wasn't very beneficial, but releasing on scary object was more beneficial. Stuff like that made her a completely different horse to ride, and I could ride her without reins. And if someone had told me that that would be possible with this mare, I would thought they were crazy. But the more I tried to control her, the worse she got, and the worse she got, the more I controlled her, and we were on the way to on a very vicious circle there. So I had to kind of break my own pattern of controlling her. Yes, and one of the things that really benefited this process was, instead of stopping her by using 2 reins, I would stop her by using 1 rein and get her to soften the body and cross over behind. Because then we have a way of stopping the horse that empties worry. Versus if we stop a horse with two reins, they might feel trapped and they can stand in both hind legs while standing still. And horses, they need to stand in both hind legs to, buck, bolt, and rear and do all those stupid things, which they can't do when they cross over behind and they're crossing their hind legs. So in this way, the bend to stop was something I could do to empty her worry and, slow her down, versus just, you know, asking for a half halt or stopping her. Right. So some of you might have tried the bend to stop and experienced how wonderful exercise this is. And it's not the same as bending the horse's neck. That's a huge misunderstanding I see everywhere. Yeah, I did the bend to stop, but it didn't work. Yeah, the bend to stop is not bending the horse's neck. It is bending the horse's neck and their body and getting the horse to cross over behind. Crossing over behind is like the crucial part, because horses can buck, bolt, and rear even though they are bending their neck. So the bend to stop is not something I teach like in one session. It's more like a pattern of movement that we can build from the ground and then bring with us up into the riding. So it requires, a bit of practice before this starts to work. But when it starts working, you actually connect your rein aid to the hind legs of the horse, and you can stop a horse very easily without needing to bend them to the stop. But that takes a while. It's not done in 20 minutes. But controlling the horse and stopping them with two reins is not going to fix it. Okay. And there's another thing we can't really fix by controlling horses, and that's forward. And something I learned from our children's horse, who had very little forward and was also very, very dull to the leg aid. Because he was like, when ridden, if you didn't keep on giving leg aid, he would just stop. So controlling him to go forwards would mean then keep on giving leg aid and controlling him to maintain forward, which doesn't work, because the more we do that, the more dull to the leg aid the horse becomes. So let me know in the comments if you have experienced this. So the answer to solving this is to actually, again, kind of allow the mistake to happen by asking for forward, but not asking the horse to maintain forward, because then the horse will probably stop. But then when the horse stops, you ask for forward. And when the horse moves, you stop asking for forward. So that the release of the leg aid, which is the forward aid, happens when the horse is forward and not when the horse is standing still. If this makes sense. This is a very common pitfall, and I can be guilty of doing this. If I have a horse who is a little bit dull, I don't want to look stupid and the horse stops with me, because the other riders manages to get the horse going forwards by keeping on giving leg aid. But that's actually the cure, because a horse always asks to move forwards with the leg aid. The only time the leg aid is off the horse is when the horse is standing still. So a horse like this will always look for a way to stop the leg aid. But if we only give leg aid, when the horse is forward, and stop the leg aid when the horse maintains forward, the horse is going to want to go forward, because that's where the leg aid goes away. So I hope this makes sense. It is a little bit counterintuitive in a way, because we need to work on ourselves a little bit to solve this. And it's basically the same with horses who are rushing and going faster when we release the reins. So a horse rushing and going faster and when we release the reins is usually looking for a release of the rein aid in the wrong place. But when we ride a horse like this, we tend to think that, oh my God, if I loosen the reins, the horse is going to go faster and faster, which it often is the case in the beginning, because The horse is basically looking for the release of the rein aid in the wrong place by going faster, not slower. So, riding forwards with a horse like this on loose reins, and the horse will run faster. You can bend them to a slower speed and then release. So the release will then happen when the horse is maintaining the speed and not going faster. And we can't do this by controlling the horse either. So the more we try to control a rushy horse, the more the horse is basically going to rush. Just as the more we try to control a dull horse to move forwards, the duller the horse is going to be. So I hope this helps because I wish I knew this earlier. And riding is in many ways a little bit like we often have to do kind of the opposite of what we think we're supposed to do. So maybe that has kind of happened to you too. And I think what often helps in this situation, or basically all these situations, is just asking ourselves, where is the release? Because horses always seek towards the release, and that's what we get more of. So asking this simple question, where is the release, and making sure the release happens when the horse does the right thing, which will be then maintaining forwards for a dull horse, or not rushing for a forward horse. That's what we need to work with ourselves on. Yes. And yeah, what more can we not solve with control? I think it's basically almost everything with horses cannot be solved with control. But as a human, we tend to find that solution first. And I think this also boils a little bit down to horses learning from the release and not the pressure itself. So it's not really our signals that matter so much, but when we release on the signals. And that's why handicapped riders can ride horses, without necessarily having a leg aid like we do, because they can use kind of another signal than their leg aid to get forwards, but they release on that signal in the right time so that it means forwards. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to a horse that leg aid means forwards. It only makes sense to the horse when we give leg aid and release when the horse goes forward. And it also doesn't necessarily make sense to horses that, tightening the reins means go slower. It's when we release on the reins when the horse goes slower that makes it make sense, if that makes sense. And this solves a whole lot of problems with horses lacking forward or horses who are rushing and always going faster. And I find it so amazing that, if we have a horse who is relaxed and forward and wants to be where they are, not everywhere else, they want to actually be on the trail ride and not back in the stable, and they want to run the circle and not be by the gate, then the horse kind of, their mind and body are like in the same place. And then it's so much easier to communicate with them with lighter signals, because we don't have to, override the magnets or other stuff that might be going on in a horse's mind. Which I think brings me to one of the last topics, which is separation anxiety, and also kind of grazing mania. Because what I think often happens is that the more we kind of control a horse, the more, tempting other horses or, for instance, grass becomes. Because horses, when they are communicating with each other, they don't control each other. They never tell each other not to do something. They always tell other horses to do something. But if we, when we are together with the horse, are controlling them a lot, they miss their buddies in the herd who aren't controlling them. Or they also might be thinking more about the grass. So the more we often try to control a horse and prevent them from grazing, the more tempting the grass becomes. Or the more controlling we are when together with them, the more fun it is for the horse to be reunited with the other horses. So again, there we can actually make our idea of the horse's idea when not grazing, if we can get the horse to associate the grass or wanting to grass with work, with more work. And I actually have a free training that some of you might have done, and it's very, very effective in, making this thing happen, because we can't really prevent and control them from grazing, but we can get them to associate grazing when ridden and led with, more work than not doing it, which then allows us to, be able to ride on loose reins in the grass without the horse snatching for grass. And it also allows us to lead, with a loose lead rope or even at liberty through the grass. But we don't get there by, preventing the horse from grazing. We actually get there by making our idea of the grass not being so beneficial, the horse's idea. And I think it's the same with other horses or the stable or whatever. But there's one particular thing that definitely helps solve separation anxiety a lot, and that is if we are, able to take the guard. So this is this is going to be a long one. So if you are still with me, then let me know in the comments below. And this is something I discovered, like when studying horses in a herd, they often, take the guard for each other, since they are prey animals. So instead of then always being on the lookout for predators, they can take turns in taking the guard. So that's why we often see one horse standing while the other horses are lying down and sleeping. So that horse is basically taking the guard for the horses lying down to sleep. Oh, so nice to see you, Maria. Marsha, too, still here. Awesome. And I think that's why horses, they love being together in a herd, because they can take turns in taking the guard. They don't have to be on the lookout themselves all the time. So they prefer being in present company, who can, spot wolves in the bushes and stuff like that. So if we can become the one taking the guard on the ground, it's going to be much easier to then take the horse away from other horses, because then the horse feels like they are together with someone who are present and able to take the guard. And we can't control the horse and take the guard at the same time. And we also can't scroll our mobile, and take the guard at the same time. We need, in some way or the other, show the horse that we are present and, able to, notice the surroundings, and also that we are able to read the horse's body language. But I think that's a little bit, too much to go into detail about this. But what I found is that very many of those who, succeed with the grazing exercise and teaching their horses not to graze when ridden and led, they also have done the taking the guard exercise, so that they have something to offer the horse when the horse isn't grazing, which is present company. If that makes sense, because that's a way we can actually become the treat when we train our horses, because horses, they value present company over food. You probably noticed, if you have a horse with separation anxiety, that horse is going to stop eating when away from the other horses, because the horse values being with the herd over eating food. So we can become valuable for horses by taking the guard. Yes, and that's always where I start with any horse before teaching the bend to stop or getting rid of magnets or doing the grazing exercise. I always start there. Yeah, and before brushing the horse, or tying them up or anything, I just start with this uh, simple exercise of being able to take the guard, which can be different with different types of horses, but it's the same principle. Yes, so this was stuff we that affects horse behavior that we can't solve by controlling them. That I wish I knew like earlier, so I that would makes horse riding and horse training so much easier. And I actually now have a program teaching this, which is at the moment fully booked, because in this program you get video series showing the exercises I just talked about with different types of horses, and you also get weekly live Q&As where you can ask questions if you are stuck. So there's a limited number of riders who can participate in this program, so that everyone gets the feedback and help they need. But we have a waiting list that you now can join on ridelikeaviking.com/course. And if you join the wait list, you will be first to know when we open again, or if there are spots available. And this program has helped very, very many different horses and riders. So if you're thinking, yeah, this sounds wonderful, but it probably doesn't apply to me because I am handicapped or whatever, this works for para riders as well. Or you might think, it doesn't apply to me because my horse is special and has been traumatized and this and that. Several horses in this program has been traumatized, or almost like the last resort, and it has still worked out. So if you found this interesting and you want to tap into a way of training horses which isn't necessarily based on controlling them, which is what we tend to do if we don't know any other way of doing it, then feel free to join the waitlist on ridelikeaviking.com/course, and I can also drop the link in the comments so that you will be first to know when spots are available or we open again. Because I hate to see you, ride through the whole summer without knowing, the grazing exercise, or how to become the herd when away from the herd, or how to solve a forward problem or a rushing problem. And the good thing about horses is that often we can solve all these things on the ground, because this behavior that we can't really solve by controlling them will often manifest in different areas of the horse's life. So a horse who has a little bit of a separation anxiety would probably also be herd bound and homebound, and will also probably have a hard time being self-controlled when on a trail ride together with other horses, because that horse is afraid of being left alone and being away from the herd. So a horse like this will probably start rushing when on a trail ride with other horses. And it's difficult to then override the separation anxiety with riding signals, because then we tend to need to use the riding signals quite a lot and we wear them out. So we can easily come into a little bit of a vicious circle that actually is making things worse, rather than solving the separation anxiety, which then often is the cause for the horse rushing after other horses on the trail. If this makes sense. And this is almost magical how easily problems can kind of vanish when we actually work on the cause and not the symptoms. And I think controlling horses often is us working on the symptoms, and it makes riding and handling horses much harder than it needs to be, because when we know how to solve the cause, these symptoms go away and horses become very easy to ride and much more responsive to signals. Plus, we know what to do to solve bucking and bolting and stuff like that, because our instinct, which is pulling on two reins, actually makes things worse. With a bucking horse gets, support for the bucking. A bolting horse will run faster, and a rearing horse will probably rear more, and we will release even more on the rearing. So I hope this helps, and maybe I will see you on the wait list and maybe even on the inside of Ride Like a Viking members before fall. So thank you so much for joining this evening, and check it out on ridelikeaviking.com/course, and you will get the chance to join. Okay, thank you so much, and bye for now.